Welcome, everyone, to another installment of Women Wired for Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Nishat Shalom. Today's conversation is going to be with Jody Levy. She's an investor as well as an advisor for several companies that focus on wellness and empowering people to take care of themselves and optimize their happiness and purpose. This includes several companies that focus on what is called biohacking, in other words, trying to optimize your physiology, clean energy, personalized medicine, and alternative wellness, sustainable fitness, clean food, and more. In this particular conversation, we're going to be talking about the intervention that had helped her overcome and defeat Lyme's disease. If you suspect you are struggling with Lyme's or you know someone who's been struggling with Lyme's, this might be the conversation you want to listen to. Once again, as always, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with anyone whom you believe will benefit from it. Without any further delay, here's my conversation with Jody Levy. So welcome, everyone. And here's our guest, Jody Levy. And she is like a serial entrepreneur. And as I've introduced her already for you, we're going to just dive into her story because it is very interesting how she's navigated her health issues. So welcome, Jody. Thank you so much for joining us in our podcast.
Thanks, Nisha. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's start with your story. Everybody has a story when they do things like you do. You're changing the health industry in a different way, not as a medical doctor. We're all trying to change this, but tell me your story as to how you got started on this journey and what was that, light bulb moment where you felt like we need more help than what the medical system can offer.
Man, that's a packed question.
Yeah, I know.
I think that when I was younger, I had a chronic illness. I had Lyme disease, but I didn't know it for a really long time. And I got really into Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And it was the system of Ayurveda and understanding that like we all have an intrinsic constitution that is in and out of balance at any time.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the inception point for me. It was like one of those things, when you learn something new and you kind of have like that insatiable curiosity to like know it deeper.
Yeah.
And you just like, you want to consume all the information, about it. I had that. And like that's, you don't get that with that many things. And I really feel like that was the beginning. And then I think, from a commercial perspective, I was very into creating brands and big kind of public immersive stories related to how to change our relationship to the planet and sustainability and, kind of the reality of our ecosystem changing, for the worst for society and what we can do in our everyday lives to like make that better. And with that, I started my first beverage company, which was called Watermelon Water, based on the idea that we could use this waste produce to turn it upcycle into, a product, but then the product itself can be an interface to how important the clean food system is to our health and our happiness. And that was the beginning of like really wanting to build brands that are kind of sexy and kind of fun, but tell like big complex stories.
Got it. So when you said you had Lyme's disease, were you and it went untreated for several years? Was that a journey where you met other kind of practitioners? Because Ayurveda is not easy in the United States. I mean, you have to go looking for it, or you have to be very desperate that you leave the regular medical system. So what were your symptoms? How did you get to Ayurveda, and how did this, this particular business idea come out of that? Because obviously there are so many ideas in this. You're trying to protect the planet or the ecosystem, and then you're trying to look at something very natural that will shift your health from, I would say from outside in, because you're using something, but you're asking the body to respond a little differently. And then you're also trying to address a very chronic condition, which is not recognized by the conventional medical system. If you ask any medical doctor, Lyme's doesn't exist. But when you look at functional medical and other what they call alternative medicine, but that should not be the word. It should be like the root cause medicine. They do address that. So give us a good understanding of how you got into this business idea, because it didn't just start off with like, I want to have a business. It was something that stemmed from your story of trying to get your health back together.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So first of all, the business is called The Milk Cleanse.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the weirdest, wackiest thing ever that helps so many people for all different things. So it's a total gut reset, which obviously you understand. And for anybody listening, the gut and the mind are intrinsically connected. So a lot of times when people have brain fog or memory issues or whatever it might be, if they reset their gut, their brain comes back to life. It's a traditional Ayurvedic parasite cleanse that's been adapted with some of the plants that we use in the supplements to also treat all kinds of like microbiological icky stuff that's not supposed to be in there. If you catch me pausing on what I say, it's because I have to be conscientious of not saying claims. So I always like to say that so that when I start getting vague, you understand why, because it's not because I want to be vague. But I founded the business because I actually went undiagnosed with Lyme for 18 years and then spent another 4 years figuring out a path to better. And it's exactly what you just said. So I was within, and I actually had access to the functional medicine world and to everything from Western, Eastern, Andean, jungle medicine, like you name it, I tried it. And I also knew that most people that get this diagnosis don't get better. They kind of like accept living with it.
Yes.
And I didn't accept that because I have too much to do and too many people to do it with and too many dance floors to watch the sunrise on. And so I was like, I'm going to get myself better and I'm going to figure out what's going to do it. And then I'm going to like share it with everybody, which is why we're having this conversation right now. So I went on this wild adventure. And it was very hard and it was laden with a lot of suffering and it was laden with a lot of people thinking that I was nuts. And when I ultimately figured out that there was this real thing going on that was invisible, I started to understand that our relationship to the environment around us is actually what's hard for our bodies. And I call that like, biotoxicity. So as our planet is getting increasingly more toxic because of all of the things that we know, the way that we react to that, to the air we breathe, to what's in our water, to what's like around us in the ground, to what's in the food that we eat. Some people's bodies are, can more easily detox, and other people like me have a little bit more of a struggle with it. And so upon this journey, I met my now business partner, Dr. Linda Lancaster, and a friend of mine who is also my co-founder in the Milk Cleanse, basically like came up to me really quietly at a dinner party and was like, I have this thing. I know no one's supposed to know you don't feel good. Like you have to try it. It's called the Milk Cleanse. And I was like, oh, please. Rolled my eyes, got all like snooty. I'm not drinking milk. Who drinks milk? No one drinks milk. And ultimately, I was in enough pain and tried everything else that I took 8 days and I hung out with my sister and I drank only goat milk and coffee and water. And I took our little magic pills every 2 hours. And every single day I had like a profound experience.
Yeah.
Like something would just shift. The pain in my wrists would shift. My vision got clear. My brain on day 5 just was like, like my gut. I didn't have any issues with my stomach. And it was amazing. And on the 8th day, this was 5 years ago. On the 8th day, I was like a new person. And I called Dr. Linda and I was like, we're turning this into a product. This is going to help so many people. It's so easy to do. We don't need a doctor involved. We don't need practitioners involved. We got this. And that was how it all started.
That is so cool. And was there a specific reason why they chose goat milk? I'm always curious about that.
So there's milk, and then, why milk, and then why goat milk. So the
Yeah.
reason that we use milk is it is cut from an ancient Ayurvedic parasite cleanse. Like in India, if a kid gets like a parasite of some sort,
Yeah.
they'll put a bowl of milk under them and they crawl out. So basically the milk acts like a magnet in the gut, and everything can kind of go into the gut. And then the pills that you take every 2 hours kills the microbiological organisms and pulls it through the system. You poop a lot on the milk cleanse, and you end up talking about how much you're pooping on the milk cleanse. But goat milk is the closest thing to human DNA. So it's a lot easier to digest, and it has a lot more beneficial properties than most other milk. I will tell you, there's a lot, like in sort of the underground indie healing spaces, there's also a lot of knowledge around like camel milk is really good for the relationship to, the gut mind connection and how the gut can reset and repopulate good bacteria to positively impact the brain. So we recommend goat milk. Some people can't stand goat milk and they use cow's milk, and it works great.
Well, I tell my patients, we've learned to mess around with the cows, not as much as with the goats. So it's easier to do the goat milk. Yes, but it does have a strong smell. But I think the point that you're trying to make here is the goat milk is medicinal. We're not talking about nutrition from it, but it's more medicinal, and which is a lot of the things about some of our foods, which you don't take on a regular basis, but you use it for the medicinal value. So tell us about I know you always talk about the 5 things that we need to do as human beings to optimize our health. And coming from a perspective of a person who struggled through this, I think it'll be easier for people to understand. Me telling other people is like me preaching. You don't know what, we've been through, but it'll be great to hear that from you. So what are the 5 things you believe that people need to know
about keeping themselves in like a healthy state of balance?
Yeah.
So my 5 things might be a little different than most others.
Yes.
The first is I really feel like it's important to know what you love. So for me, I love really large sound systems. I love the vibration of sound. And one of the most healing modalities in my everyday life is music and dance. And it's like the thing that drops me straight into presence so that I can hit flow state. And I'm not like 10 minutes behind or an hour ahead. I'm just like in that moment. And I think that finding that sense of presence and flow is the single most important thing that you can do. I think that like a clean biotoxic environment is really important. So the quality of the water that we're drinking on an everyday basis, the quality of the air that we're drinking on an everyday basis, the quality of the food that we're eating. I sort of put that all into one category of being, somewhat particular about like what goes on and in our bodies. I think that knowing how to reset our systems when we go out of balance is really important. This is what the milk cleanse is now for me. I never looked back. 5 years ago, I did my first milk cleanse, and my life was changed. But now I still do it like 2 to 4 times a year, because there's times where like I'm working a little too much, or I'm playing a little too hard, or like whatever it might be. And it's okay. Like our bodies are constantly evolving. Like when I get out of sync, I might not feel great, but you have to know the thing that brings you back into balance. Right. So that's like a really important thing, and can often be very personal. Yeah. For a lot of people, that's like, okay, I'm not meditating every day. Like, how can I not make 20 minutes to do so? Right. Which brings me to my 4th, which is like doing that thing for our present mindfulness. And, I know meditation can be hard for some people, especially like the A-type overachievers that are just going really hard. I remember once my dad, who's like the least spiritual person ever, told me that he was working in a building somewhere in New York City, and he would go into the closet and breathe for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, you meditate. You secretly meditate in a closet in a building, so like whatever that looks like I also have an app called Neuropraxis, It's on the iPhone store, and it has 75 hours worth of neurosculpting, brain repatterning modules. My partner, Lisa Wimberger, is incredible. She's invented this way to get into the midbrain and repattern stress and PTSD triggers. I do that. I try to do it every day. That's sort of my thing. And then the fifth, is like making time for the people that are really important. I think that that's like one of the 5 most important things, community and finding ways to like connect and express and receive love is, definitely like one of the most important.
Yeah. I like the 5 things that you've said. We say it in a very different way. The first one, if I can rephrase it, is do the thing that brings joy. For you, it was music and dance. And most people, when they talk to me about all of their problems, I ask, what brings you joy? Let's focus on that first, and then we know what problems you have. So I think a lot of times we forget what brings us joy, and we do less and less of it. In fact, that gets booted to the last when problems arise. And in fact, when problems arise, you go to your point of joy, which is whether it be a long walk in nature. Yeah. For you, it's music and dance. For someone else, it might be just reading a book, whatever it might be. And that might put you into the flow state. And I really like the repatterning of the brain. There are so many apps, and yours is called Neuropraxis, you said? Okay, I'll put that as a link. The repatterning is something that's very important because on a regular basis, most of us feel very traumatized by things that happen now with social media and all the events in the world. And it's how you keep repeating things, you form patterns in your brain, and you don't realize that really changes your outlook to life. And I think I like that part where I think, again, comes down to self-care. And the resetting, for you, it's the milk cleanse. For someone else, it might be just eating clean for a week after you go on a vacation, so you haven't really bothered about what you're doing, how you slept, or how much you drank. Could be a reset for a week. And the last one is the connection with the community. The connection with the community is, again, very difficult. How do you, 2 things I think are difficult of the 5 things that you mentioned. One is the connection with the world around us, the biotoxicity. I don't think people realize enough about the biotoxicity. Neither does the medical world, which is what I think 75 to 80% of the people have connection only with the medical world when it comes to their disease states. Their doctors don't talk to them about biotoxicity because it's not even in their radar. Like, there's something that you can change. Is that an expensive journey for them to change that biotoxicity? Number one. Number two, the one with connection with family. What are the little hacks that you have found that is useful, that'll help people create that connection? And the last, we'll talk about the flow state and meditation, because that's a lot of self-care. So if you could just talk about those 3
I think that there's different degrees on the biotoxic stuff. I think that, like, if people pay attention, even as simple as like grabbing a Brita filter, or getting like, making sure that the water in wherever you're living is cleaned, or thinking about getting an air purifier. And honestly, like, it applies to some people more than others, because some people can detoxify their biotoxic pathways, and 25% of the human population can't. And so there's like molds, and there's the way we respond to metals. And I think it's just like, you can go off the deep end with it, which I try not to do, although I live pretty clean because I like to feel really good. Or you can do like the little steps to just being conscientious of it.
Right. Changing the filter of your furnace. I think I tell that to people. I mean, how often do you go and check that and clean your vents? A lot of little stuff that you can do for maintenance. I think that's a good way to do that, because I don't want people to go into the part of getting very scared about everything. And
me either.
Yeah.
And I think it can be affordable and easy.
Absolutely. And we spoke about the other part was the connection with the community. What do you think helps them do that? Because you can have toxic connections, or you can have, I call it relationships that inspire you and those that expire you.
That's a
And
good point. I think a lot of that is about understanding and paying attention to the body as like our metronome. Like our body often tells us everything we need to know. So if there's people in our space that we're in relationships with, that are, in our day-to-day lives, that are in our friend group, that are not helping us be the best version of ourselves,
mhm,
that aren't like opening us up and expanding, but they're making us feel like shut down and closed in. And those aren't people that we have to be.
yeah,
I'm not going to say should, because there's different dynamics all the way around. And there's plenty of people in my life who like, I love like family, but they don't, get all of me. Right.
yeah.
But like, I think that sometimes it's just about having some easy, healthy boundaries and not engaging, and realizing that like a lot of stuff is other people's stuff. And I don't know, just like kind of defining what the true north is for each of us and sticking to it, and not letting other people pull that away.
Right.
And I think that helps us stay in like a really healthy, balanced homeostasis.
So this is a lot of work for each one of us. Every day you have to take stock of where you are, taking your temperature and making sure you move towards the positive end of that spectrum. So in terms of, and the last one being meditation, which everybody's scared of, but I loved what you said about your father, breathing in the closet. That is meditation, because you're
Yeah.
focusing on that one little thing. You're chopping carrots. If you're looking at the carrot, how orange they are, or how beautiful they are, or the size, you're focusing on it. That is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, when we're doing, like today morning, I went to the gym and I was walking back. I saw some blood tests my brother had sent me of his own blood test. I was reading it, and suddenly I realized, oh my God, where's my phone? And I'm actually looking at his labs on the phone. It just tells you, like, my mind was, I'm like searching frantically for the phone. Did I leave it at the gym? And I'm like, fuck, it's like in my hand. And then the keys I leave. So that's where you're not in the moment. And a lot of times I think it's very important for people to realize meditation is an easy habit, is just to focus on what you're doing. Like we're having this conversation, and if I'm not focused on what you're saying, or you're not focused on what I'm saying, we're not meditating. We're
Yeah.
like awareness is wandering. So for people who are listening to us and particularly struggling with chronic health issues, what is the first step that you believe that they should do? And they, like their doctors, have taken away hope, saying this is something you're going to have to live with. Even if they go to a functional medical doctor, I've heard a lot of people say, I've had Lyme's for the last 2 years. I've been taking different rounds of antibiotics. I just have to live with this chronic disease. And I'm thinking in my head, no, you don't. But how you, having experienced this journey to wellness, what is the first thing that you would like them to shift in their mindset?
So, first of all, I've been there, and I know how it feels when you're completely alone. A doctor gives you a diagnosis like the one you just expressed to me, and then you share that with the people around you. And then instead of them being an advocate for your perseverance, it's almost like okay, well, let's accept it and move on. Let's stop. Are we done now? Like, and it's a very belittling experience. And so first of all, for everybody listening, I really understand what that feels like. And I'm so excited for you, because when you get better and you prove them all wrong, you're going to be so happy. And I'm going to be so happy with you, because that's what happened to me. But it did take me doing some really weird stuff, like the milk cleanse, to get there. And I will tell you guys, like, the milk cleanse is a total passion project. I run the business myself. I funded the whole thing myself. It's a very tough business to build in the world. I can't say much about its functional benefits. Milk is the weirdest ingredient ever. The functional medicine space hates it. I totally understand why. Like, I've got everything stacked against me. And the only reason that I'm doing this is because I want people that express what you just expressed to get better. And so I will tell you that without exception, every single person that I have asked to do the milk cleanse to just trust me and do this experiment for 8 days, every single one has sent me an expression of gratitude and success, and that it completely rebounds them to like find their totally optimized wellness, which
And
is a big statement to make.
yeah, absolutely. So where can they actually find the information about the milk cleanse?
Themilkcleanse.com. It's all online. We only sell it online. There's actually 3 things. Like if somebody's struggling, so the milk cleanse is for all different types of people. It's
Right.
not just for Lyme. I just happen to like, that's what it kind of reset for me. But there's people that I know who do it because they have brain fog or they're feeling exhausted. We have women that do it before they get pregnant to just like kind of clear the system and reset every, all the different systems of the body. A lot of people that are balancing hormonal stuff, gut stuff, intense stomach issues, colon issues. It's really like a lot of people. Actually, there are very few people that are buying it for Lyme right now because the Lyme community doesn't even really know about it yet. So it's all sold online, and it comes in a kit with all the directions and all the supplements. And you source your own milk wherever you are in the world. And there's some therapeutic baths. And that's for the first phase 1. And then phase 2 is 3 weeks where you return to clean food and you take the supplements 3 times a day. So it continues to kind of pull everything out. There's 3 things that I believe are imperative to people that are struggling with Lyme getting better.
Yeah.
One is to do the milk cleanse. For people that have taken antibiotics, oftentimes they have to do it 2 or 3 times over a long period of time just to kind of get everything out of the system. There is a frequency device called the Wave device. It's Free Medica is the name of the company. And they have these another thing that I totally rolled my eyes at, by the way, but like now I swear by it. So the people that ask me how to get better fast, I have them turn that on after they do the first week of the milk cleanse. And it's a 90-day protocol, the initial protocol, and it's awesome. My friend Yolanda Hadid called me about a year and a half ago and was like, I know you think you feel amazing, but it's going to make you feel even better. And it totally has. And like, I'm totally obsessed with this thing. And then the third thing is the reason that I created Neuropraxis, the brain repatterning app with Lisa Wimberger. The first library that is on the iPhone store right now is called Biotoxicity. And we went and we mapped all of the different experiences that people with chronic illness, invisible diseases, mold exposure, Lyme, fear of viruses, healing from viruses. And there's all these different categories related to like the brain, body, psychology of being sick. And those modules can be used over and over and over again to stop the limbic looping in the brain. And so that's the trifecta: the milk cleanse, the Wave device, and Neuropraxis.
Explain the limbic system looping.
So if you've ever heard of like a diabetic that has to lose a limb or their foot, and then they still have phantom pain in their foot, the reason for that is because our brain loops. So like what you were saying earlier about when you believe something and you continue that, thought process. Yeah. So meditation is amazing. It relaxes the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, but it does not repattern the midbrain where our stress and PTSD triggers and associated loops come in.
Yeah.
So a lot of times if we get better, so I got better. I did the milk cleanse. I started hiking mountains again and running around and feeling happy. And I came in and ran one of my businesses as a CEO for 3 years in like a crazy, pace. And it was like driving a rocket ship, and I was awesome. Like I never would have been able to do that before. I was like secretly in bed half of every day. And, but I still had pain in my back, like really bad pain. And I was just like, every expert I saw, I was like, just cut it out, cut me in half, like just cut it out. And I very serendipitously met Lisa Wimberger, who's written a bunch of books about neurosculpting, which is this process that she invented where through a guided meditation, she opens the prefrontal cortex, connects the left and right brain hemispheres, and enters into the midbrain, and then guides the listener through a active mental module, for lack of a better word, that repatterns the pain or the symptom associated with that issue.
Mm.
And then she uses memory triggers with the body to retain and remember it. And they're super easy. Like in the app, we've got a section called the feel goods, and they're 5 minutes. And like,
Nice.
if I have anxiety, because, I overachiever in the world, I'll like turn on the anxiety feel good. And in 5 minutes, I'm just like, okay, I've reset. I got this. So anyways, the entire premise of the work is based on the idea that in the midbrain, we can stop and repattern this limbic looping. And then for me, I did 4 sessions with Lisa. My pain was gone.
Mm.
I never looked back. I'd lived with it for 20 some years. At which point I called her and was like, oh my God. Okay, I've outlined every symptom everybody in my life has ever had, from light sensitivity to pain in their joints to, psychology around the medical system to nobody believing that there's something wrong with us and this and this and this. And we went into the studio and we recorded all the modules. And now we have 4 new libraries coming out. One is Neuropraxis for peak performance. There's a general library for stress and anxiety, like day to day, that'll be like the perfect meditation, daily dose, so to speak. And I do them like it's active. So I do it while I'm walking. I do it while I'm riding my bike. Like I don't have to be sitting still.
That's
So
nice.
It's nice.
Yeah. So they can be, do you recommend they do it even when driving? Because some of the meditation, you cannot do it.
No.
Yeah, you might relax yourself a little too much.
We don't recommend it while driving any vehicles.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So, these are all hacks that people can do on their own without anyone, like you said. It's just that you're putting this information out that at least they know that they have access to this. Is there anything else that you believe like people are not seeing, but it's happening on a daily basis, and that might be keeping them in that, what do you call, the conveyor belt of chronic disease and feeling in the victim mode, which is what keeps a lot of people where they are. They're not ready to, I always feel like your care has to be driven by you. And as a physician, my job is to make sure I guide you and get the time shortened between the time that you decide to heal to the time you heal, if we can call it healing. Neither can I make any claims. So
yeah, totally. The two of us are like,
okay.
Let's ebb and flow in how we say what we say.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, honestly, there's 2 kinds of people in the world, at least as it relates to the ones that get to me, who usually are suffering from like toxic mold exposure or Lyme, and they're looking for my personal recommendations on what I've done to get better fast. There's the people who are like, I will not take no for an answer. I don't believe anybody. I know my body and I will get better. I just haven't found the thing yet.
Yeah.
I really resonate with those people. And then there's the other people who I very much love and have tons of compassion for, that are looking for the next modality, but their story of being sick is part of their own journey. And I try to just jump in, offer up what I know, and then I kind of jump away and see if they feel better, then they'll fly. And sometimes they're like, oh my God, I'm better. I didn't even realize I was kind of stuck in this thing. And sometimes they're like, okay, what comes next?
Yeah.
And that's fine too, because I think that a lot of times, as you opened our conversation today, the reason that stories like mine exist is because of perseverance, or because there was some type of journey that led to some discovery or some suffering that led to some discovery that can help other people.
Right.
And so I think that the mentality that you're talking about, there's a fine line between people who have really just heard that they're totally fine and they know that they're not, which is a very, very emotionally distressing experience.
Yep.
And one that I'm familiar with. And people who are kind of identified by their story. And I think for anyone listening who doesn't really know, like maybe you sort of waver between the two, I promise you that once you get strong and you get clear, there are so many more stories that you can dive into and identify with. Don't be afraid of being out of control by letting go of this and believing that you're going to get better. Because when you get better, there are going to be so many things that come that you can't even anticipate or begin to expect.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. I think really people need clarity, and many times their mind is muddied more by no hope, like this is something that there is no cure for, or there is no solution that's ever been found. You're wasting your money, you're wasting your time. They hear that a lot. And if they're not strong in their desire to get better, it can be very disempowering, because they feel like, it's very funny when people come to me for the first time, they've never heard of functional medicine. And when we talk about diet, the first thing they'll go and ask their doctor, this is what I've been asked to do. And it's like, if your doctor could have helped you, you wouldn't be sitting in front of me.
Totally.
We are like completely, so it's one of my first conversations is what I say for the next 90 days. I just want you to trust me and take this new journey. So that's something that I tell people is, if you haven't found a solution and you are presented with a solution like this and you want to give it a try, for 90 days, just trust the process and then give your opinion. But when you start something because you have that lack of clarity, you have that doubt, and you go to the person who did not help you to ask for an opinion, you're going to go down that hill of cynicism and doubt and never get the result. And I think the mindset is very important. I feel like with you, that probably was a very important part of it, is like, I am going to find a solution. And so you grabbed at everything that was thrown at you. And it did take you had to evolve to get to your solution. It didn't just happen. I mean, I think the very first time you got diagnosed with it, if you were presented with the milk solution, you probably would have said, no, I'm not doing that, because you had a lot more, correct?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I actually, got into alternative therapies and alternative medicine and functional medicine early on. And dairy is the enemy.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I can't, on our website right now, I think the opening graphic is like, ew, milk. And I made it one day because I was like, I get this. Like, milk is gross and it's weird. But the truth is, when you're drinking only that for 8 days, it's like there's protein, carbs, fat, there's no deprivation. It's not like being on a juice cleanse. People that usually hit day 8, the majority of our customer service emails, which come to my inbox, by the way, are like, I'm on day 8. Can I stay on milk for another week? I've never felt so good. And I love that. It makes me feel so good. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing that I think I need to point out. My personality is different than most. I am an artist. I'm a formally trained artist. I have a degree in fine art in painting, and I am running 9 businesses right now simultaneously. I am the director and CEO of 5 global businesses. I have 4 startups. I'm on a bunch of boards. I invest in a lot of things. I do a lot. And I'm the type of person that does things with a certain lust for life. And I take my health really seriously, but like, I know I don't register no. Like somebody says no and it looks like a rock in the road and I'm like, am I going over it? Am I going around it? Like this thing is not stopping me. So this is why I have committed myself to creating these solutions, these tools, and going out there and talking about it. To be totally honest with you, I hate talking about when I was sick. I never told anybody when I wasn't well because I didn't know if I would get better. And then when I was done, I wanted to just move on. But I also made a promise to myself, and the thing that drove me to figure out how to bring myself back was knowing that I could help everybody else that is experiencing what I went through get better.
Yep.
And so for that reason, like, I'm out trying to tell my story in every possible way, because when people are like on Instagram and they see something that's like, ooh, an 8-day milk cleanse, and they roll their eyes and they're like, that is the grossest thing I've ever heard. Like, I can't compete with that. It's true, but it's actually amazing and it's delicious and makes you feel awesome. And so, I think that the place where those two things come together is that not everybody is wired to trust themselves and trust that they know something better than a professional or an expert or a doctor they've worked with forever. And I'm trying to create the world where they don't have to be the like persistent, warrior that I am, where they can just be like, okay, I'm not getting better doing other stuff, so I might as well just try this easy thing. And it's not going to hurt me if I do it. So I'll just try to do it.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for everybody else to go out and like, war against the machine and, like doubt your experts or doubt your trusted doctors or anything like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
Just press play with your headphones in for 7 minutes and see if you feel better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like that one point that you make, which is how I end most of my videos, is health is intuitive and it's your business. Disease is what we go to medical school for, and that is the business of medicine. And to me, none of us listen to our intuitive voice. We know to some degree why we are sick and that we are sick. And there is a solution. The body needs to heal. I just know my body. So many of my patients tell me that. And what you're telling them is trust that you know it, and trust you will find a solution, and give any solution that's thrown at you a chance to work the right way. And I really love that, because the other thing that I tell all patients is you always have an option, but you got to understand the problem. And most of the times we think the disease is the problem. A lot of times it's the person carrying the disease is stuck in a problem. And what you're trying to tell people is just open up and look at, the other options. Is there something that I should have asked you and I haven't asked you?
Am I fully better?
Yeah. Okay. You want to say that? Tell us that.
I have never been more healthy, more energized. I've never had a clearer mind. I've never felt more in balance, and I've never felt more empowered in my body than I do now.
Yeah. Because every day you're doing something to invest in your health.
Yeah, and because I got myself better.
Yes.
And then, I do what I need to maintain.
Yes.
And when I get a little off balance, I have the tools to get myself back into my center.
Absolutely.
Yep. But I like the thing that most people that spend years hearing that they're never going to get better and you just have to deal with it, it's not true.
I agree. 100% that we can all agree on. And that's been one of my mantras is there is always a solution. The questions are you willing to understand the real problem? And a lot of times, the real problem is our willingness to open ourselves to a therapeutic and a healing process, because there's so many ways you can address it. And with you running a lot of these businesses, there are so many pieces to the puzzle that help you just get to the next level and the next level and the next level. It's not like you stop with the milk cleanse and said, okay, this is it, I'm going to do just this. There were other things that you added to it. So I really appreciate that part of it. Is there any, if people want to get to start in this journey, where would you direct them?
I would direct them to themilkcleanse.com.
Okay.
I really, really recommend, like, there's a bunch of stuff on the site for people that don't do dairy, are lactose intolerant. There's a lot of people that have done the milk cleanse, do the milk cleanse very often, that have written about it so that they also can share their story. My sister is a professional fitness instructor, and she uses it in her practice, and she is 100% dairy free, and she loves it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of information. There's a section that you can go to called Wisdom, where it's either called Wisdom or Discover. I'm not really sure. I'm blanking at the moment. And there's a bunch of articles about, how this works and all of the things. We have support emails and text messages that come for those 8 days when people do it. And I highly, highly recommend it. It's like an amazing intervention that kind of jump starts feeling good and wanting to do the things in the day-to-day that keep us thriving.
Awesome. Yep, that is awesome. Yeah, I think this is just another tool that they can add, so they have an option. They'll give it a chance, and then probably let us know if it actually works.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would love to know too, because I am plant-based. So for me, the thought of goat milk, the thought of milk itself has been an issue. But I was raised in India, where milk is considered very healing. For everything, it's milk. I mean, literally everything. We woke up in the morning, we had to drink a glass of milk. I used to chug it down till I became an adult and could say no to it.
Yeah.
So it's like doing another 8-day. I may take you up on your offer. I just have to see if I can wrap my head around.
Listen, if you decide to do the milk cleanse, I'm going to do it with you. We can do it together.
Absolutely.
And we can get some really good quality, farm fresh goat milk.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Yes.
And we can start with 4 days.
Yes.
So, for anyone that doesn't necessarily have an invisible kind of thing that they're dealing with, and they just want to reset, you can buy a kit, share it with your significant other, and do a 4-day cleanse. And it's great. It's like a little micro cleanse. Sometimes people have to get their head around 4 days, and then they feel so good that they're like, oh, I'm doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of people that are vegan that just make an exception for this a couple times a year.
Yeah. Well, if it helps people, why not? Ultimately, healing has to happen, because I feel it's not it's not something that you get to choose. It's that should be there's no other option other than healing, because disease is a choice at this point. In today's day and age, living with disease is a choice. I'm not saying this harshly. It's because where the problem is, we feel stuck in that victim mode. So when you go past that and you decide, I have to heal, and what is there available for me to try, and I'm willing to give it a try, I think this might be just an easy way. Even if it's a 1-day cleanse, try it and get started with it.
I have one more thing I want to say to the mentality of victimness. I think that there's a truth to the environments that we're living in are increasingly more toxic. And the way that those toxins, whether it's exposure to mold or tick-borne illnesses or heavy metals or chemicals in the air, in our soil, they impact the brain.
They do, yes.
And the biochemical impact on the brain can often create a mindset that is out of our control.
Right.
And I think that sometimes when people that are so deeply suffering feel like their mindset needs to change, but then they try all these things and it doesn't happen. There's a comfort in understanding that there are like toxins impacting our brains that are actually keeping us from thinking clearly and keeping our brains from acting the way that they're biologically engineered to act.
No, you are very right. Yeah. The mycotoxins particularly. Yes.
Yeah. And so I just think for me, it was comforting when I finally learned that, because everyone in my life was like, change your mindset, believe that you can be better. And I was like, I fucking believe, but like something's not right. And then I learned about it and I was like, no, something was actually
not right.
Like attacking my brain.
Right.
So I just want to put that out here in our shared space, because this is literally why I created this thing, the milk cleanse, so that it resets the gut and it resets the brain, and it can kind of start to like allow us to even get to the scientific space,
right,
where we have control over our mindset.
No, you're absolutely right about that, because in our functional medical world, when we talk about mold infected or mold, when they're struggling with mycotoxins, one of the challenges is we need almost a village to help that one patient go past that, because they are truly sick. They really cannot think straight. They can see beyond their own illness and how poorly they feel. So it's like really trying step by step. In fact, one of the physicians in this space, Dr. Neil Nathan, always says, you start with oh yeah, he just says you start very, very, very gently, and you slowly increase it. Go to the smallest tolerable approach. So I'm glad you did bring that up. And that's what I always tell people, there is always a solution. This might be a simpler way to get started if you have tried just about everything.
So I have a new product coming out.
Yes.
It's called Myco Me Free.
Uh-huh.
And it's 4 supplement packs a day. It comes in a drawer of 30. So you can do 30, 60, 90, because you know how long it takes to detoxify. And it's a series of both like nourishing inputs and binders, timed. And I've taken my mold protocol and I've simplified it. And it's going to make such a difference for people that like need to get the mycotoxins out of their system. So I'll keep you posted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me know. Send me a link and so I can take a look at it.
We're not there yet, but
yes,
soon.
That'll be awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. This was very interesting. It gives I love talking to people who've been through this journey, because it's more relatable for a lot of folks who are struggling and saying, hey, she's just like me. She struggled too. And I can give this a try. So thank you once again for coming on to the Women Wired for Wellness.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So as we come to the conclusion of this particular podcast, I wanted to explain to those of you who are kind of a little confused about why goat milk. When you look at the research and the study on other mammals' milk, other than cow's milk, you find that many of these milk products, the protein, the immunoglobulins that's present in both the early milk, the colostrum, which is the first expression of milk from the mammary gland, to the mature milk, they have 2 specific characteristics. This is studied mostly in camel milk, but can be extended also to goat milk, which is present in many of the whey proteins used in China. The milk has both a metabolic function and an immunological function. So the immunity is where they help with the gut health, and the metabolic is where they work on the insulin receptors. Milk in general, whether it be particularly, I would say, camel milk more than goat milk, it tends to trigger the insulin receptors such that the production of insulin goes up, the production of glucagon goes down. Remember, an hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, which increases the production of insulin, also goes up. And it's been seen, especially even in India, people who drink camel milk, who tend to camels and drink camel milk, they have a decreased incidence of type 2 diabetes. Now, the immunological functions of both goat milk and camel milk is pertaining to the gut health. When we have Lyme's disease or mold related infection, or I should say, mold related conditions, because in the mold it's actually the mycotoxins, not necessarily an organism, it's because our immune system is not able to tackle and get rid of the insult. And that is particularly seen with people who have underlying chronic inflammation from chronic stress, from whatever source it may be, emotional stress, physical stress, or chemical stress. So, in many of these treatment protocols, remember, you have to change your diet, your nutrient. But if you're struggling to do that because everything you eat creates a problem, which I have a lot of patients who can eat healthy food and feel bloated because their stomach is so inflamed and they have the wrong kind of gut bacteria, something like a camel or goat milk seems to help them. So though I'm not a big advocate, in fact, I'm not an advocate of drinking any other mammal's milk, if someone is sick and we are pushed against the wall as to how to help them, this is still an option. So for those of you who have seen me talk about plant-based diets, ultimately my job is to be the physician that can find any and every method to get people well. And I have had patients who cannot tolerate any kind of vegetable and have received a lot of antibiotics for Lyme's, therefore their gut is completely damaged. And something as soothing as a group of immunoglobulins from a mammal's milk, other than the cow's milk, which unfortunately has been, I would say, tampered with because of how the cow's milk is extracted in the United States, I think it becomes very important to look for alternatives. So for those of you who love to be plant-based, you still have that option. If you can tolerate fruits and vegetables, I would always recommend rebuilding your gut and your immunity by shifting over to a whole food plant-based diet. But if you've tried that and you're unable to sustain yourself, the milk cleanse is probably another option. So if you have any questions, make sure to post it in the comments below and let us know how this information has helped you. Remember, health is intuitive and it's your business. Disease is what we go to medical school for, and that's the business of medicine. I'm Dr. Chalam, founder of Holistic and Integrative Center of Novi, the best place for you to find your best doctor, and that will always be you.